With 2016 out of the way and 2017 already well into its year, I can finally now start talking about all my favorite movies of the last year. Now, there were a lot of good movies or a lot of bad movies, but I don't like focusing on the bad stuff, so today I believe I'm just going to focus on all my top 10 favorite movies of the year. Now, everyone knows that 2016 wasn't necessarily the best year in the world, but it did have a lot of fantastic movies, so let's get into the top 10. But first, let me get out some honorable mentions. First, here we have Don't Breathe, a pretty cool horror thriller film. It was pretty good. I just thought the only problem is that the trailers gave a little too much away, and I didn't like the opening of the film. Still, all the acting was really good. It could have been a little bit better, but it wasn't perfect, but it was still a lot of fun. Next, we have Lights Out, another really good horror film. Actually, a bit more dramatic than I was expecting it to be, which isn't a bad thing. I just thought it was a little too short. It could have done a little bit more, but still a lot of fun, great horror, and actually had me scared a few times. Next, we have The Witch, which is a really cool horror fairy tale type thing. It tried a little too hard to be a period piece. That one guy I really couldn't understand, but I get what they were trying to do. It had a few flaws, and a lot of people said this is the best film of the year. I can't really agree with it, but still, it creeped me out just well enough, and definitely worth a recommendation. Next, we have Star Trek Beyond, which is probably my favorite of the three new Star Trek film series. It just barely makes it onto this list. There's just other films that are on this list that I think are better than it. It's just this close, so close to being in my top 10. So, you know what? Let's make this a top 11. This is my 11th choice for my favorite films of the year. It's a wonderful film, a lot of action, a lot of great characters, a lot of great moments, and I promise you're going to be seeing one of these actors later in this list. And at number 10, we have The Conjuring 2. The Conjuring 2 is a wonderful supernatural horror film. Normally, supernatural horror films don't scare me too much, but here, this one actually creeped me out. The only part where it wasn't scary and it kind of lost me was the climax of the film. I felt it went too action-oriented, but that's just a small little moment in the film where everything else was just basically pitch perfect. James Wan knows what he's doing, and I love seeing him do his craft. I want to see another one in the series. I have no interest in Annabelle, but that nun, man, that nun is creepy. Definitely check this out, if not for the week ending. And up next, we have The Nice Guys. The Nice Guys, well, what do I think about it? It's in my top 10, so clearly, I loved this film. The Nice Guys is basically an unofficial follow-up to Lethal Weapon or Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Shane Black and everything, and it does it with gusto. He knows what he's doing, he knows his craft. This is an 80s movie that is in the modern age, and if you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. It is wonderful. Both Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe own their parts, and if you haven't seen it, you have to now. And at number 8, we have Kubo and the Two Strings. Kubo and the Two Strings is a stop-motion animation masterpiece. It's made by the same people who made Paranorman, and I loved Paranorman. It's up for debate whether or not I liked this more than Paranorman. I'd have to sit down and watch them both back to back. But this film just hits all the right notes. I loved every character in this film, and it did things in a children's film that I wasn't expecting it to do. It was emotional, it was action-packed, it had everything that I wanted in this film. It was kind of weird seeing it in theaters because I was the only adult by himself, the rest of them were children. And I was kind of surprised because this is a more adult film than I think I was expecting. This is a PG film from the 80s, and it is wonderful. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's worth seeing. See it with your family, see it with your friends. This needs to be seen to be believed. It's a shame it flopped at the box office because it's a wonderful, fantastic masterpiece. Up next, we have Hardcore Henry. Hardcore Henry is a first-person shooter action film extravaganza. This was the first film in the theater that I saw multiple times because I had to see it with multiple friends because you have to show them this stuff. This is wonderful. This is action filmmaking at its purest. This is like a John Woo film if you watch it from the first person's perspective. It is everything I want it to be and so much more. Everything goes boom, there's blood, there's explosions, there's just pure raw action. The choreography is great. I didn't get motion sickness like other people did, and I'm pretty queasy when it comes to things like that. And just everything about the film was just entertaining. It used to be in my top 5, but unfortunately there are films that I thought topped it. This film is just a wonderful, wild ride, and I cannot recommend it enough. But if you do get motion sickness, please be careful. And it is very bloody and very adult-oriented, but still a lot of fun. And at number 6, we have Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. Rogue One, A Star Wars Story is just a visual masterpiece. It has great characters, great action, great writing, great directing. The guy who made this film, he knows what he's doing. He also made the Godzilla film, and that was my favorite film of 2014. And now this film, while it isn't on my top number 1 on this year, it still had a lot of great things going for it, and I definitely recommend checking it out. Some people might think it's weak, and it isn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I enjoyed just about every second of this film was going on. Things felt huge, things felt well crafted, just everything was wonderful in this film, and I highly recommend it. It definitely earns its spot in the Star Wars storyline. And at number 5, we have Hacksaw Ridge. Hacksaw Ridge is a brutal, dark, depressing action, war, drama, at times weird comedy about Desmond Doss, a pacifist who served in World War II but saved many, many people. There is not one flaw I can think of this movie. I don't even want to talk much about it because I want you to just go out and see it. It is a perfect war film, and I even enjoyed it more than Saving Private Ryan. Don't think of the religious tones as heavy-handed because it really isn't. That's not what it's about. It's about a brave man who saved many lives, and you need to see this film. If you haven't already, check it out as soon as you get the chance. It's very violent, but it earns its spot on this list. And at number 4, we have Sing Street. This is another film that just hits all the right notes in all the right places. Sing Street is actually my one friend's favorite film of the year, and I can see why. While it isn't my number one, it is basically a perfect film. It's a comedy, it's a drama, it's a coming-of-age story, it's everything you want in a film like this. It's also a musical, and the music numbers in it are fantastic. It's so good that all my friends and I, we had to buy the soundtrack. If you're a music lover, you're going to love this film. It's dramatic, it's funny, it has great characters, it hits all the notes, as I said, and that's not a music pun, I promise. At number 3, we have Everybody Wants Some, and trust me when I say I wanted some of this film. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to see it in theaters, but as soon as it came out on Blu-ray, I ran to the store, I bought it. I think I actually pre-ordered it actually, and it came in the mail, and as soon as I opened up that case, I was like, let's watch this, son of a gun. And you know what? I enjoyed every second of this film. There's not a lot of real drama in it, and I kind of liked it for that reason. I felt as though if it had like too much drama or things like that, it would have dragged me down because the movie just puts me in such a positive mood because it's just a movie about a bunch of guys hanging out, really. And that's kind of what I wanted to see in this. It's basically a better Dazed and Confused. It's not as much of a stoner movie as that is. This is just a bunch of college baseball students hanging out, getting ready for college, and it is fun to watch. It's relaxing, it doesn't stress me out, it just puts me in a positive mood, and I cannot recommend it enough. Now at number 2, we have 10 Cloverfield Lane. 10 Cloverfield Lane was kind of a surprise for me. I was really interested in it when I saw the trailer. I was like, oh, okay, cool, a new Cloverfield movie, but I didn't think much of it. Then I saw it opening night in the theater, and I was like, wow, this movie was astonishing. It was, at the time, my favorite film of the year. Obviously, it's not number 1 because I saw one movie that impressed me even more. But holy smeg, this movie was close to being number 1. If my number 1 movie was not in this list, if it didn't exist this year, this would be number 1 by far. This movie is fantastic. It is a masterpiece. I know a lot of people say that the ending was kind of off, but you know what? With all the tension that was in this film, I felt that with the over-the-top ending they had, it was a bit of a sigh of relief, and I didn't mind it. I didn't mind it at all. I loved the ending. I loved the scenery. I loved the acting. I loved the characters. I loved it all. This movie is wonderful. I even liked it more than the first Cloverfield movie, and I adore giant monster films. This film, John Goodman, you are the man. You owned this role, and God bless you for it. God bless everyone involved in this film. This film was fantastic. This needs to be seen now, not later, now. Now, my number 1 film of the year, it's kind of an odd one. People who know me obviously know what my favorite film of the year was going to be, but people who don't, it's going to be up in the air, obviously. But it's a film that was very underseen. Not a lot of people know about it. It's an indie horror film, and it's excellent. But first, let me get out some honorable mentions that I didn't talk about at the very beginning. I thought Deadpool was pretty cool. It was alright. I didn't like it as much as everyone else did. I actually really, really enjoyed the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. I thought it was really fun. I had a lot more fun with it than I did with the first one. Even the Magnificent Seven remake was okay. X-Men Apocalypse is actually my favorite, just mainline X-Men film. It had the best Quicksilver scene. It had the best action. I felt it wasn't perfect, but it's by far my favorite one. But then again, I'm not too big of a fan of the X-Men films as a whole. And yeah, that's about it for the other honorable mentions. The Lobster was okay. I just thought it was a little too depressing. But anyways, my number 1 film of the year, it's kind of an obscure horror film, kind of came out of nowhere. And when I saw it, it blew my mind. Anyways, let's get on to my favorite film of 2016. And my favorite film of 2016 is Green Room. Yes, the immortal horror classic that is Green Room. There is nothing that I can say about Green Room that basically can sum up the movie. You just need to see it. It is a phenomenal horror masterpiece. Everything about it is perfect. It has perfect pacing, perfect acting, perfect execution, perfect kills. I'm running out of breath just talking about it. I can do a whole review of it, and you know what? This movie actually almost had me writing an entire essay as to why it's a perfect film. Jeremy Saulnier has also directed two other films, one called Blue Ruin and the other called Murder Party, and I love those films too. And if you watch them in order, you basically see him maturing as a film director, but all of his films are great. This is my favorite of his, and if Jeremy Saulnier ever sees this top 10 list, which I guarantee he won't, but he needs to know that this film right here, is fantastic. A lot of people saying that it's a little too disturbing, but it's a horror film, and that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be dark. It's supposed to be depressing. It's supposed to have everything that makes you feel creeped out, and it does everything with pure, raw gusto, spry, swagger, everything. There is nothing that I can say about this movie that's going to sum up how I accurately feel about it without going into at least an hour-long conversation about it. You know what? If I talked about this film for as long as I would want to talk about it, I'd probably talk about it longer than its running time. That's one of the other nice things I can say about it, is that it's not too long. I know I said with Lights Out that I felt it was a little too short, but that's because I felt like it was a little rushed. But this one, the pacing is perfect, and it felt like its hour and a half long length is the perfect time. It told its story. It needed to get done what it got done, and it did it very, very well. There's almost nothing wrong that I can say about this movie aside from that one plot hole involving that telephone in the room. But even that was just a small little thing compared to what is the new modern classic of horror films. What I like about this film is that it's not an 80s horror film, it's not a 90s horror film, it's not a 70s horror film. There's no decade that I can associate this with. It's just its own horror film. And if I can give any credit to a film more than that, that's as good as it can get. Because really, if a film is just good on its own, you don't have to connect it to any specific time period, it's just its own film, that's better compliment than you can say, oh, this is an 80s action movie, it's a 90s horror film, or things like that. And honestly, it's a shame that this movie didn't get seen more, because it deserves it. It is a phenomenal horror film. There is nothing wrong with it. I loved every second of the film. I want to see more from Jeremy Saulnier. Jeremy Saulnier, you are the modern king of indie films. I love all your films, and I cannot wait to see what you do next. Green Room is phenomenal. If you haven't seen Green Room, see it now. Do not wait to see it. See it. I don't care how you have to see it. See this movie. It is fantastic. It is brutal. It is raw. It has everything that you want in a horror film. Anyways, that is my top 10 for 2016. I hope you all enjoyed my list, and God bless. Peace.